Well, welcome everybody. The module that we'll be speaking about today is called What Does a High-Performing Board Look Like? And I'm delighted to share with you today and introduce you to my good friend and colleague, Pam Carter. Pam began her career as a lawyer. She became the first Attorney General for Indiana. She had a lifetime dream, though, of becoming an international trader and business leader. And her next job, she went to Cummins Engines to be their general counsel at a difficult time when they were dealing with some consent decrees. And her deal was that she would help them through that time if she could be moved into the international business, where she ultimately ran as presidents two of the international business units of Cummins Engine, and never looked back. Has been a superb leader and business person ever since, as well as having a great background as a lawyer. Pam's held many high-profile board leadership roles, for-profit and nonprofit organizations. And we're here today to discuss our roadmap to board excellence, which Pam has used to engage her board and management team. But before we start, I'm going to ask Pam and then myself to do a brief bio of the current board roles that we're on. So Pam, over to you.
Well, hi, Linda. I'm delighted to be with you, my friend. I'm on 3 for-profit boards. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, where I am the chair of the HR and Compensation Committee. Broadridge Financial Solutions, where I'm chair of the Audit Committee. And I'm chair of the board of Enbridge Inc. And I'm also on 2 not-for-profit boards right now. I'm the chair emeritus of the Nashville Symphony and the Indiana University Foundation trustees.
And Pam, your collective year of services for nonprofits and for-profits, we were counting it up yesterday. It's probably about a century at least.
Oh,
right?
Yes. I started, quite frankly, when I was in junior high school, particularly. So, yes.
Amazing. Well, for me, I'm currently on the board of CSX. I've been there for 7 years, and I chair the Nom and Gov committee. I'm on the board of MSCI, another S&P 500 company, since 2005, and I chair Nom and Gov there. And I'm on a private equity board called Napa Anesthesiology. I've been on that board for 5 years. I've chaired and currently chair a number of nonprofits. It focused on literacy and transformative work. And my service is a little younger. It's probably totaling a little over 65 years, Pam, but I'm trying to get there. This module is about a tool and a document, which is 17 or so pages long, and we're hoping you've read it before you watch this, but you can click on it. You can find a link below where you found this video. We're going to talk about the rubric and roadmap itself, walk you through it, and then focus on the use cases and particularly Pam's experience using it in one of her boardrooms. So with that, let's put up the first slide. Here is the definition of leading edge stewardship. We defined it as an ethos and a set of practices, and I'm just going to read it. An exceptional board operates as a high-performing team of committed individuals with a broad perspective, committed to service, grounded in both purpose and strategic discipline, with a learning mindset, who take responsibility for the long-term health of the company. Pam, what's new here to you? What's motivating? You were one of the first people working on this whole project with us at the beginning. What stands out?
Well, first, I like the statement overall. It's quite compelling. There are 3 words that all pop out at me and motivate me. The first is high-performing team. To apply that to boards is relatively new standard, but I love it. And it allows us to really be thoughtful about how to get there, because that's an output. And how to get there requires a commitment to excellence. How to get there requires a clarity and an insight and a purpose. How to get there requires an alignment and an agreement among board members. And I think that's very important as an output and also an aspiration, because it does unify the board. I would also say that the learning mindset jumped out at me too, because we have seen how we have to, in this rapidly evolving landscape, be capable of adjusting to it. And we do that through being a much more effective board if we're learning all the time, whatever kinds of sessions that we have, including, this statement and the competencies that we will be reviewing in a minute. It also reflects a commitment of the board member. and of the board writ large. We have a board, and I've seen this in all the boards that I serve, whether we have internal or external commitments to learn, board members do. And it shows that they really care and they really want to be, on top of what's going on. And I'd say finally, in terms of the long-term health of the board, it's absolutely essential. You can't have a short-term view only. It's required, but it can't be the sole focus of the board. The long-term health of the company, which is also part of your fiduciary responsibility in terms of their interests of the company being paramount, is essential.
Yeah, navigating the short term to get to the long term, but the board owns long-term health.
Absolutely.
I also want to note that we've done the rubric we're going through today is for a corporate board, but we've also have a roadmap for nonprofit boards. And this opening statement of how we defining leading edge stewardship is pretty much the same. The rubrics are a little bit different, but the opening statement is the same. And that's been your experience, Pam, that this would apply equally well to the skills needed in a for-profit or nonprofit boardroom.
I completely agree. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so let's go a little deeper into the roadmap. So here's a picture of the roadmap, and it's not meant for you to read every piece here, just to get a sense that down the left-hand side are 14 practices and competencies that the board as a whole needs to look at and develop. And the x-axis, moving from historic to aspirational, are really improving levels of board coherence and excellence to help navigate the current environment. So movement to the right is going to require more time together. It requires team skills, continuous improvement practices to enable effective, agile, strategic ways of the board working with itself and with the management team. So movement to the right describes a culture, as Pam likes to say, seeking excellence, and it needs to be embraced by the board as a whole, and then the management team, and vice versa, in order for the board to really cohere in its responsibilities of both oversight and governance. So Pam, let me ask you, what do you think is the target audience for this work and why?
I think anyone that is on a board or aspiring to be a board member can use this tool and well, because I do think that it gives them the ability to think about the board competencies and understand effective boards and how they must develop over time. I think the target audience is those that are in the leadership levels, whether it's the chair of the lead director, whether it is the CEO and the chairs of different committees, because at that level, they have a responsibility for thinking about the journey to excellence, about the board culture, about the board practices. And it's also this level of leadership that has the platform most capable of elevating a common understanding between the board and management, as we want to make it great in the move toward that high-performing team.
Great. So let's just take a deeper look at the roadmap, how it's structured. So at the top of this page, you can see the framing question. We call it a framing question, or it can be a framing statement. And it reads, for the journey to becoming a high-performing board in support of a company that is strategic, adaptive, and capable of delivering long-term sustainable value. Again, for the board to cohere around that question, to recognize its responsibilities, and the dimensions you can see more closely here, the 14 different dimensions. When you, Pam, look at these competencies and how the world is changing as a chair, what stands out to you? What's new? Why is this helpful?
I first want to underscore the fact that the law considers each board member to be a fiduciary, and a fiduciary's duty constitutes a legal standard of behavior in which one is expected to ensure the company's interests remain paramount. That's where you get the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and fiduciary is a Latin word for faith or trust. But what we're finding is that it's insufficient to guide us for ensuring the long-term health of the company. And we need to also have the what and the how we work together in order to achieve these goals. And this roadmap is a very helpful tool in helping us to get from A to B. And I also see these competencies as showing evolving roles of boards, the dynamic shifts toward enhanced governance excellence, and also a greater shift to real performance. Boards work harder today than they did historically.
Yeah. So let's pull up the stages in board effectiveness. And one of the reasons we developed the rubric and the aspirational column here on the right is because boards are being challenged by unprecedented changes in the environment, stakeholder demands, and really need to look at short, medium, and long-term horizons when thinking about how do we navigate the short and medium term to get to the long term. So Pam, we arrived at these categories and stages largely because we were looking for 3 originally and really found there were 4. We found that there were many boards that had legacies or vestiges of practices that were started in the early 1900s when many of our companies were founded. And, you've really emphasized that even if what we have written here, some of these practices seem outmoded, like a CEO bringing his friends on the board. And the reason that would be outmoded is not because the friends can't be great. It's because we know in order to have boards as teams help the management team see around corners and focus on the future, they really need a much broader diversity of background, skills, experiences. So whether it's gender or race or global or AI, that you have to build with intention builds these boards these days. Any comments about the roadmap overall and how you think about it as a tool?
I like it as a tool, and I think that people can see themselves or the board or the enterprise in any of these boxes. And we come at it not by judging it or considering it good, bad, or indifferent, but as an assessment tool to determine where we stand individually and as a board. And it just helps us to be informed about how we go about our business and how do we get on to a journey toward a destination of a high performing team. And so it's a learning tool. And I think part of the questions in the debate will be whether or not where we land and where we think we should. And there will cause a lot of robust debate, and it should, because it's a very comprehensive and very robust tool. So it's not one that we take lightly. And we, use it more than once, and we've had to, because it is comprehensive and it's a lot to absorb. So yes, I like it. And I think it's been a very, very useful tool.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you said to me yesterday is it takes time for an individual who's an expert coming on the board to cohere as part of a team. And time is part of the journey, right? It just doesn't happen with a snap and overnight.
Yes, and we're talking about this. This module is about the board writ large, but we also have a personal roadmap that mirrors this tool, because you're going to need both. Any person that's been new on a board can remember the days when they're first there, don't know anyone, or often don't, or few, and have to then create and develop the relationships, hopefully deepen them, hopefully with all of the board. But that doesn't necessarily mean that even those engagements will create a team. It's a lot of work, and you're going to need to set the tone at the top in order to do that. And as I said, just saying, well, you have a fiduciary duty is insufficient. And so this tool has come in handy for us and for me personally as chair of a board in so many ways.
So Pam, you are a natural leader, and in your role as chair, as I said, you worked with us on this from the beginning, but then we're one of the first to bring it into your boardroom. Can you kind of walk us through what you were doing, how you did that, what some of the takeaways were?
Sure. First of all, to sort of set the scene, it's a new chair. I was a new chair. We had a new CEO, and we had about half of our board was relatively new or brand new. And most were either then midterm, and only a couple of long tenured people. And so that's a huge diversity of time, tenure, and capability to try to pull together. And using this tool, I decided, in partnership with the CEO, we talked about it, who also presented the same tool to the executive team. We wanted to go to an offsite, come together, create a safe harbor, and present the tool, which we did. To my delight, the board readily accepted it and really liked the tool and the robustness and comprehensiveness of it. And, we have some on our board, we have a great board, and some are very scholarly and like getting into the idea component of it and loved it. No one could find a fault with it and liked the roadmap. And so we used it, but we continue to use it. And it remains at the back of board books so that we can constantly reference it. And the point of all of this is not only just to look at where we were current state individually and as a board, and then future state, what are we aspiring to, but it's going to lead to our own roadmap, and it will be populated into our 2024 priorities.
Yeah, I really like the fact that this is a tool to get you going, but it is your own roadmap, and every board will find it's used in a different way. And it gives you that flexibility as opposed to current effectiveness ratings, which kind of lock people down and feel like they're getting graded good or bad. You've emphasized a number of times non-judgmental. I think that's a lot your leadership style, Pam. You're an amazing leader, but in using the tool, did you find that you were able to create a safe space for people?
Their reactions suggest that. I think you have to come in humbly because I don't know. But what we've been able to see is that they are using the tool individually. They can refer to it and as a group. And we will continue to look at it and use it as we see fit. And it's been a very useful and, like I said, robust tool.
So when you have any final reflections, kind of takeaways, and I know you believe deeply in building trusted relationships, any stories from your experience about being with other chairs and what a chair needs to do in this day and age?
Yeah, as I mentioned that, being a new board member can be a heavy lift. And I was on a board and I was new and I literally did not know anyone. And I was getting to know this one person who traveled with me all the time, who was very cordial, but then would say nothing to me for the remainder of the trip. And so after the second time, I said, I'm not going to have this happen. And I happened to be somewhat shy, but this person is impeccably dressed all the time. But I saw a little hair from an animal, a cat or a dog, and I thought, aha, maybe that's an opening for seeing whether that person has a passion for a pet. And so I asked whether it was a pet. I didn't say that their sock had hair on it, but and this person exploded with passion in terms of their dogs and how important that was to them. We became good friends and remained friends. And I learned a lot from that because you don't have to also be passive about engaging with folks. But it's also a heavy lift. And if we have tools like these competencies and these personal roadmaps can help us along, it really helps us to be developing faster and better.
Yeah. So just in closing, I'd say that the purpose of this tool is because the challenges ahead of boards are significant, and intention is required really to build a culture that is, as Pam, you like to say all the time, is about excellence. And it takes a learning mindset, meaning we're going to make mistakes and that's fine. And we're going to be in different places and that's fine. The trick is, where are we comprehensively across all these competencies? It gives you a document to look at and start conversations and say, what should be the next step? Where should we go? And you can reflect on it over time. And as a chair, really think about building that culture. And I must say, Pam, having worked with you so much, I'm always inspired by you and cultures that you build and your commitment to excellence. So, thank you for being with us here today. Pam had referenced that we have a companion piece, which is called the Personal Roadmap. It was the module filmed before this one. So if you skipped it, go back. I don't know, Pam, if you want to make any comments on that or the rest of this before we close out.
Well, these are excellent tools, and it would be a shame if they just sat on a shelf and collected dust. They are dynamic, they are useful, and they can really, and they're great teaching tools. So I would really urge people to, in your journey toward high-performing teams, to explore, these roadmaps.
Well, thanks for being with us today, Pam. Great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you all.